Hi, my name's Rob Ryder, speaking out of West Cornwall, and I'd like to do this short video really repeating, because obviously it needs repeating, how in my book there, Debt Slavery, The Economics of a Banking Mafia, edition 2, how I came across in the previous videos, money creation on steroids and how to bankrupt the bankers, how I came to understand this information. And like I said, I believe I've never heard anybody speak about this. Nobody in the alternative, even economists, nobody. I've tried to get this information out, no success at the moment because nobody really understands it. And for me, what this enormous piece of information, it's like, why don't people either get it or get the significance? I've done talks over years regarding the monetary system, and even if you do a talk for an hour and a half, people will come out within 2 days, they've lost it again. Because they allow themselves almost to get confused when, again, the truth is simple, and it is simple. It's not complicated. But there's certain things that you have to drill into your mind as your foundation, and then it becomes simple. And so in the book, what I've learned over the years is define your words, what you mean. It's all in the definition of words. What do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? When you start to define what you mean, which nobody does in this area of finance and money and economics, what I believe I've seen people see. People confuse things and think things are all the same. So in the book, the original version, I define what money is, currency, barter, and economy, economics, and finance. I defined all them words. So if we stick to the first two a minute, because this video today, I'm just going to go over and repeat what I've been doing over all the videos. There's a subtle difference between money, currency, and credit. People think they're all one and the same. They're not. You could say they're all forms of money, but they're not the same forms of money. And this is why people are getting confused. It's a little frustrating for me, but it is what it is. So I'm just going to define and show the subtle. I think I've done it over all my other videos over the last couple of years, but I'm going to try and do it again, just to try and just focus on those words. So money is something generally accepted as a medium of exchange, a measure of value, or a means of payment. Currency is a medium of exchange for goods and services, or money in the form of paper or coins that represent an agreed value when direct exchanges cannot be made. In modern times, we have numbers on a computer screen, electric currency, that represents the physical currency. The numbers, though, can also represent a debt or a credit. So I've tried to define there the difference between money and currency. They're not the same. Currency is a form of money, but they're not the same. Money can be anything. Anything you have a value and you want something off somebody else that they have a value and they value your product, it doesn't matter what it is, it's irrelevant. As long as somebody values it and wants to exchange for it, that's money. That's a money transaction. So with the problem of bartering, we haven't all got these things that we can exchange for. The idea of coins, notes came into existence, what we call currency. Now, this is where another argument comes in, which I go through in the book and I've gone through in previous videos, but I don't want to get sidetracked here tonight. But yeah, you can have currency with intrinsic value. Yeah, so they say gold coins, where the value is within the currency. So the currency then becomes what gold people say, real money. Why? Because you're making a transaction of something that they believe has value. So that's where currency becomes what they call real money, gold coins. it becomes real money. Problem with that is I don't value gold, and I can see how it can be manipulated. So whoever has the gold has the power. And in what I've been saying consistently for a very long time, it's the economy that should dictate to the currency, not the other way around. When you have a gold-backed currency, eventually whoever accumulates the gold dictates what can be done in the economy, which is nonsense because you go back to the beginning again, everything is free. Everything is free. So you need a system, which I put forward, where the economy, which is free, as long as we've got imagination, we can provide a product or a service, somebody values it, we can produce a currency to back up that. Yeah, it's free. Then we, the people, dictate to the currency. And as long as that stays in balance, you'll never get inflation. Simple as that. I don't want to get sidetracked, but I need to re-emphasize this. So we have money, which can be anything. You have currency, which represents a value, a given value. But then you can have, should we say, currency, which is real money for the people who believe in gold. So you'd have a gold coin. So it's real intrinsic value. The value is within the coin. Or you can have a note, which is a gold-backed note, which can be exchanged for an amount of gold, because obviously you can't be carrying too much gold around. And that's the argument of why the gold people say it's real money. Yes, it is real money if you value it. I don't value it at all. It's an delusionary value, if you ask me. And it also then eventually the gold, or who has the gold, dictates to the economy. Should be the other way around. That's the only way we're ever getting a free and equal trade going on in this world. The economy should dictate the currency. It's the only way it can work. So we move on from there now. What a lot of people saying for years, and when I first got into this after the 2008 financial crash, is banks create money. Now, Richard Werner, the economist, the only economist I know actually knows what he's talking about, says this: banks are the money creators. Yes, they are. Well, let's be very specific with our wording. Banks are the currency creators. Yeah. So currency is money, but it's a very specific type of currency. We're not talking about gold-backed currency here now. We're talking about general. People call it fiat currency. Fiat currency is not backed by anything. It's just people printing money, but it doesn't have to be like that, as I've gone through in the book. But let's be clear now. Banks are the creators of currency. So you have the central bank with permission of the treasury that can create the physical currency, gold and gold coins, and in modern days, electrical currency. They can create that through quantitative easing, things like that. But we know 97% of what we call the money supply is created by banks as credit. And everyone says banks, when they create credit, are creating money. Yes, they are. They're creating currency. Again, I'll go back and be very specific tonight again, actually. They're creating the currency supply. But what people don't get, even though it's very obvious, is high street banks cannot print money. Yeah, whether it be electrically, digital currency, physical, they can't do it. So they're not, via extending credit, they're not creating currency in the traditional view of it. They're extending credit because they can't create currency. Credit, when it's extended, manifests in the real world as currency because it can be used to buy things. So somebody like David Icke has always said, credit is money that doesn't exist, never will exist, never had existed. That's not true. How could you buy a house with it? How could you buy a car with it? How could you use a credit card and buy things with it? It is real. The nature of it is what people don't get. And then the other extreme, economists and people in this arena, shall we say, think that banks are creating currency when they extend credit. Not quite true. Yeah, extending credit, which is basically the forwarding your future earnings. How do I know that? Because if you want to mortgage 100 grand, you have 100 grand credited into your account, but you have a separate account with a minus 100 grand. Yeah. So they've extended their credit to you based on your promissory note and your income. Right, we're going to give you 100 grand over 20 years, but you've got a deficit there. And as I've gone into the other videos, I'm not going to repeat myself too much. The total money in existence isn't expanded. Only the money to supply is expanded by 100 grand with the extension of credit, or the currency supply, should we say. But the total currency in existence isn't, because there's 100,000 deficit to equal it out. And as you pay back your future earnings, which this came into existence to represent your future earnings, as you pay it back with your future earnings, that comes back to zero. Yeah, to zero. So the total money supply goes back as it was. The total money in existence hasn't changed. Yeah, the money supply was temporarily expanded, but not with real money that was printed, because there was 100 grand deficit there. This is a very subtle difference between banks creating currency via credit and banks extending credit as a temporary expansion of the monetary supply. This is how credit works, because banks cannot create new currency. This is what nobody seems to get, like I say, even economists. It's a subtle difference, but what I found out with the mortgage-backed securities, asset-backed securities, they're keeping that money alive as it's paid back and convert it into real money. So what I was calling real money, currency, is currency that comes into existence, expands the monetary supply, but there's no deficit. Yeah, there's no deficit. So the total money in existence also expands. So when the Bank of England prints new money by a quantitative easing, 100 million, the monetary supply, currency supply, expands by 100 million, because it's not an extension of credit. It's the production of new currency. There's no debt attached to it to pay back. So the monetary supply expands, and also the total money in existence expands. If it was done with something had to be paid back by a credit, you'd have an expansion there and a deficit there, and as it's paid back, it comes back to zero, which is how credit's supposed to work. There's nothing wrong with that. But as we know, they expand the credit, the debt say they expand the credit, but they also expand more with the interest, and that interest is never created, so it doesn't exist. That was the issue myself and everybody had been talking about for a long time. But what most people don't seem to realize is when you're paying back this credit, it's taken out of existence. But what the investment bankers are doing behind the scenes, as your mortgage is coming back to zero and taking that money out of existence and basically killing it, it's led a new life behind the scenes with this mortgage-backed security, where that money now, as it's been paid off and killing there, another version of it goes back to the investment bankers, so the monetary supply stays expanded. The printing money, this is how they do it. Yeah, this is why nobody can understand what I'm talking about, or no one sees the significance of it. It's like I say, it could be frustrating, but it is what it is. You know, that's just how it is. But people need to understand the difference between money, currency, and credit. They are all forms of money, but they're not the same. Money can be anything that we have a value that we use to exchange. Currency is a specific type of money in the form of notes, coins, or electric digits in modern times. Credit is an expansion of the currency supply, we say the money supply stroke currency supply, with an equal deficit because banks cannot print money. It came up with this clever term of an extension of credit, which is based on your real money earnings in the future. That's why it pays back and it comes back to zero. So yes, once it's extended the credit, it is real currency in a sense, because it mingles in with the whole of the rest of the currency supply. So I'm sorry, David Icke, currency credit does exist. Sorry, it does. And this is why people aren't seeing it. It's the form of existence it takes. This is why people are missing it. It's a temporary expansion of the currency supply that will be paid back by your future earnings, that was brought into existence to represent your future earnings. So as your future earnings come in, you pay it back, so the money's not being doubled up, because the extended credit based on your future earnings, they didn't borrow you what I call real money currency. Because if they borrowed you physical real money currency, there would be no deficit on their account there. It would just be a loan. They've loaned you this and you'd have to pay back to them, and that money would go back, not be killed, go back into the bank's reserve account. But no, it's a separate account within the bank, your mortgage account, that comes back to zero because it was an extension of credit. I've tried my best to explain this now. I don't think I can simplify it any other way. You either get it or you don't. If you get it, unfortunately, most people don't see the significance of this, that they're converting that extension of credit, which isn't what I call real money, real currency, and by selling it, they're killing it off publicly, but behind the scenes, they're keeping it alive. And as we know, the high street bank, the central banks, the investment banks, they're all part of one system. They work together to asset strip the world and enslave the world, individuals and countries. This is how they do it. And the enormous expansion of money now that we're talking, I've even heard the term quadrillion, don't even know what it is. Where's all this money coming from? I believe it's coming from converting it credit, which is money, but is not exactly the same as money. It is a currency, should we say, which is a form of money, but it's not exactly what I call real currency. And the subtle difference is how I notice it. That is how I've seen this. People don't understand that very, very subtle difference. It's so unbelievably simple. And a while back, I did a video, where's the financial crash? And I said they don't want to leave a void because 2008 is pretty fresh in people's minds, and the kind of reconstructing what they call the green economy by getting everyone into universal credit, everyone into debt, everyone dependent. So as this system's crashing, the new one's being reconstructed. So it isn't just a crash and a void, which, you know, they might think, oh, we can't leave them to come up with their own solutions. But with this asset-backed security, what I've realized, all the billionaires and trillionaires living up in Dubai, they're getting all their money through investments. A lot of it, their investments, is coming via buying asset-backed securities. It's free money for them. It's free money. As long as we, the people, continue to pay our debt off. That's why I don't believe they'll risk another all-out crash, because I don't think the public will allow the governments to bail the banks out again. When they bailed the banks out last time, you know, in this gap, there was in the investment arena, which most people, even in that arena, don't know what's going on. They're just gambling. They don't know what they're doing. There were winners and losers. The people who really know what's going on are always winning. I don't believe they want another complete crash, because I don't believe that people accept the bailouts of the banks again. And all the people who are living up on the Dubai and the super yachts and the supercars are dependent on us paying our debt. So I think they're going to keep this system going for a while, so they can asset strip the world, build up their own wealth to a point, and they'll do their system of dependency then, because there'll be so much debt around our necks. They'll have filtered off all the wealth for themselves. That's the end game then, but it will be totally dependent on them. I believe this is how they're doing it. I'm hoping, I've tried my best tonight. I'm not going to do this video again. I'm hoping now you can see the difference between money, currency, which is a form of money, and credit, which is a form of currency, which is a form of money. But none of them are quite the same. Yeah, I'll give it a go. Let's see if you understand it.